Hello, I'm Nan Simonson. I am a nationally board certified health and wellness coach working with a lifestyle medical practice that is now called Blue Zones Health. And I'm very proud of our affiliation with the Blue Zones and what that stands for. But that's not why I'm here today. What I'm talking about today is something that has to do with a protocol that I've adopted, and I am at the 6-week point today of this protocol. I began September 3rd, and it is the protocol of Dr. Brook Goldner, the Goodbye Lupus protocol. That wasn't a protocol when she, for 3 months, to lose weight, to get ready for a wedding, ate a certain way. The way was dictated and formulated by her husband, who was I'm going to say physiologist. He had a master's degree in things of the body, and I'm not sure exactly what that was, but he trained people. He was training people to get ripped, to be healthy, to look good on TV shows, and he was very, very popular. And they were getting married, and she said, "I want to look great in Hawaii in my mermaid type strapless wedding gown." And he did that with her. Thing is, when she came back, she found out that the lupus that she was told would kill her. She had to tell this man who said, "Will you marry me? I may not be alive in 3 years. I'll probably be on dialysis in 6 months." That was her story. That was the story. That's why he said that this protocol will save your wife. And she says it'll save your life, because it saved her life and saved his wife. And she found out she had no more lupus, never came back, had babies she wasn't supposed to have because it would kill her, because it would come back, didn't come back. So the protocol, bottom line, is very, very specific. It is 3 parts. Well, one part, so I guess 4 parts. One part is what you don't do. There is no animal product. There are no oils. There is no alcohol. And the part that you do is raw, all raw vegetable, and with a focus. This is where it gets very specific, a focus on green leafy vegetables and in cruciferous vegetables, because cruciferous vegetables are the most healthy on the planet. Do you know what the #1 healthy vegetable on the planet, um, as defined by nutrients per calorie? That's kale, #1. And #2 is, I think, bok choy, and #3 is spinach, which is not a cruciferous, but boy, that counts, being #3. And so the protocol is these greens. I'm not going to get into it. Watch another one of my videos, watch her things. They'll all be listed below. And so you have your raw greens, and there can be fruit up to 25% of the volume of that food, and that's it. Then there is massive amounts of water to keep the body so hydrated that as these chemical reactions and metabolic changes are taking place, there's enough fluid in there to keep everything moving in the brain and the body and blood vessels, in the cells. And that's a lot of water, at least 96 ounces. I've worked up to 110 ounces a day. I'm 5'2". That's a lot of water. That's a lot of use of the bathroom. And it is what it is. But the body adjusts. It's really interesting. And then the third part of it is massive amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. We're all plant-based. The protocol is plant-based. So where do you get them plant-based? You get them from flax and chia, the two top sources of fatty acids. These are essential fatty acids, body doesn't make them, that have the highest amount of 3s and 6s, because there are a lot of things that have 3s and 6s. Most of them have 6s that dominate the 3s, even though the ratio should be no more than, let's say, 6-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio of 6s to 3s. most things, well, sesame seeds. I have to rethink tahini, but I'm sure I'll find a place for it still. 2,300 to 1, um, 6s to 3s. That's rather shocking. So the point is that in order to get the 3s higher, we better keep the 6s low. And where do 6s come from? The other part that she says none of. In other words, no added oils. And I'll get to the other part in, well, no, I've already said that. Why does she say no processed foods? Because processed foods are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids, animal products, animal foods, all of them, from the dairy to the egg to the flesh, to the fish, are all full of omega-6 fatty acids, some omega-3s, but the 6s dominate. The problem with that is there's an enzyme that chews up and makes this available. Well, that enzyme is drawn to the 6s before it is the 3s. And so in other words, the 6s dominate. So if you keep the 3s up, if you keep the hydration up, if you keep the diet to almost perfection in terms of nutritional value for any given amount, then you've got a winning thing. You see what I mean by specific? That is her protocol. So I ended the sentence of why no processed foods on Dr. Goldner's practice or protocols and for your health, because I'm going to talk to you about processed foods. We hear this all the time. The statistics now are that 65% of what I could say people in the Western world, but I'm just going to say in America, 65% of what we eat in America is processed food. Think about that. The foods that we should have very little of dominate what we eat. So what's the big deal about that? I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to give you the 7 reasons processed foods are considered unhealthy, okay? Starting with they're high in sugars. They're high in added sugar. Many of them, especially snacks and sweets and sugary drinks, have large amounts of added sugar. Excessive sugar intake is bad for diabetes, heart disease, dental issues, and general health. It also makes you want more. Do you know what dopamine is? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Well, there are sugar receptors in our stomach that are dopamine receptors in our stomach that are triggered by sugar. Soon as the sugar comes, any kind of sugar, goes straight to the brain goes, yahoo, and makes it not only enjoyable, but worse. It's not only a reward neurotransmitter, it's a drive transmitter. It's just like there's a lot of casomorphines, a neurotransmitter, in a cow's milk because the baby has got to want to go back and suckle more and more and more. That's how it becomes hundreds and then thousands of pounds rather quickly. Well, it does the same to us. Do we really need more of that kind of food? That's where it gets us. More on that later. So excessive sugars, excessive get the mouth working, excessive salt. Processed foods often contain high amounts of salt in a number of forms to enhance flavor and prolong the shelf life. That can raise our blood pressure, leading to heart disease and stroke. And it causes the body a lot of harm, including fluid retention on a number of levels. It can actually damage us at the level of our organs, multiple organs. Number 3, unhealthy fats. Processed foods contain trans fats or saturated fats that can raise bad cholesterol, lower good cholesterol, but also a number of oils, and almost all processed foods have added oils. A number of oils, almost all oils, except maybe cold pressed olive oil, which is an omega-9. So it's not good for you. It's not bad for you. It's neutral. There are some polyphenols in it, but that's another story because we can just eat the olives. But the majority of all of the seed nut oils, and actually the majority of even nuts are much, much higher in omega-6s than 3s. And so with an excess of that, instead of having that 4-to-1 ratio, 4 6s to 1, 3, better yet 2-to-1, better yet 1-to-1. Instead of that, most Americans have anywhere from 20-to-1 to 30-to-1 to 40-to-1. What happens? Is that a big deal? Heck yes. Omega-6s are inflammatory. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They're inflammatory in that they're part of our immune system. They buoy up our immune system and elevate our immune system and help us heal. Well, if you overdo that, then it becomes, and they are overdone again to those huge ratios, then they become highly inflammatory. Animal products are inflammatory because they're acidic. Our body does better with an alkaline balance, and we get that from plants, but they're also problematic because the oils, the fats in animal products are much, much, much higher in omega-6s. So unhealthy fats, low nutritional value. During the processing, the foods lose their natural nutrients like their fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And so people that eat them are eating foods of much lower nutrient benefit, and they're craving those foods and they're missing out on vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, phytochemicals, polyphenols, the things that actually, like the resveratrol that people say we need in wine. That's all part of the polyphenols. We can get that from the whole food. It doesn't have to be processed. And in the case of most processing, there's none of that left. And then they add back in some vitamins, but they are out of sync as opposed to the way these things are balanced in nature. Chemical additives. Processed foods often contain preservatives, artificial flavors, colorings, emulsifiers, most of which have a negative effect on our body. They affect our microbiome. We eat whole foods and mainly plants, or exclusively plants, which I've done for 6 years, because it feeds our microbiome, which then actually is a regulator of not only our neurotransmitters, but also the health of our entire body. If we have a healthy microbiome, great diversity, excuse me, then we're going to have a healthier body and a healthier brain and a healthier nervous system. These chemicals disrupt it, create a plethora of unhealthy bacteria that feed on the unhealthy food, including the massive amount of the processed foods and whatever it is that they feed the microbiome. And it leads to something called dysbiosis. In other words, we're kind of a mess in our gut because we no longer have the healthy combination that even knows what to do with healthy foods. That's why sometimes, and this is an aside, sometimes when we are fixing our diet from an unhealthy diet to an extremely healthy diet, some people have to go low and slow because they have to build up I'm using, my head's going through all kinds of words. I'll just say the diversity of those bugs. I was going to say the cornucopia, but I just said it, didn't I? Of good bugs. Okay, and then finally, well, not finally, number 6, refined grains. Whole grains are very healthy for us, just like legumes, just like whole vegetables, whole fruit, whole seeds, whole nuts. Refined grains mean that a perfectly good grain is refined to the point that it's the fiber is stripped off of the outside. The endosperm is the starchy part that's left, but the germ where the protein is and a lot of the nourishment is also stripped off of it. So you get nothing but basically white powder, a starch that is then made into a food. That's why certain foods that are wheat-based, corn-based, even quinoa based, if they've all been refined, you're not getting that food at all. You're getting a stripped down version of the starch that then has all of these additives, all of these flavors, salt, sugar, oil added to it in such a way that, as it says in number 7, makes portion control almost impossible. Processed foods are often designed to be hyper palatable, making it easy to overeat. They contribute to excessive caloric intake and therefore, in many cases, to excess weight. Studies have shown that if people are given a identical amount of food, but one is processed products in calories and in volume. One is processed products, the other is whole food. That with the processed foods, they will eat an average of 300 calories more a day because they're not satisfied. They go back and eat more. They go back and eat earlier. They go back and eat often, as opposed to whole food plant-based with the fiber intact and the nutrients intact that allow us to be satisfied and then move on our day without thinking about necessarily having to eat more because the food has taken care of what it was supposed to. So high added sugar, excess salt, unhealthy fats, low nutritional value, chemical additives, refined grains, and portion control issues. These are all what we have taken on ourselves without knowing it. Our population, in many cases, my husband, who is, well, he's a CPA tax attorney, today, the 15th, yahoo, his 6-day weeks are done because of the extension period ending today. But he was just saying to me at lunch, see, he comes home every day for lunch. Yeah, lucky me. I'm just kidding. Because where else is he going to eat? Where else are we going to eat that we're not getting all of this, even from the best restaurants? I have a place I go that I adore that is a vegan restaurant. It's the best anywhere, and yet I know I get more salt than I need there, and I get more oil than I need there. But I go once a week. It's our treat, whole food, plant-based, but I know I'm getting some of these things. The food isn't refined, isn't processed because it's real food put together there, but there is this element that makes it so good that at the end of every meal, even though it's a huge plate of food, we both say, does it have to stop now? Because the food is better than mine. Maybe because it uses things that I wouldn't, like the extra oil and salt and maybe even sugar, but I don't know. So what he was saying today at lunch was, I'm seeing these clients come in year after year after year. He's been doing this for 35 years. And he says, every time I see them, they're heavier. Now, he and I have been married now. I lost my last husband of 40 years, and we met a couple years later, and we've been together 12 years in a month. And during that time, he and I are the same weight, even though, well, no, I'm less, and he, actually, that's not true. It's true. Both of us are less. From the time we went plant-based, we both lost about 4 or 5 pounds. But we were fine even without it. We're just thinner now. But it's true. Think of most people you know, every single year. There's this, I'm going to call it innocent, little bit that's piled on and piled on and piled on to the point where they are now starting to deal with a number of chronic disease issues. What's that about? Gosh darn it. It's the processed food. And where do you get processed food? Not just out of a bag. You get it when you stop for what looks like an innocent meal. When you go to your favorite restaurant, you usually don't get it, even if you go to a friend's home, because most people don't do at home what they do behind the scenes in a restaurant. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So compare what I just showed you to a diet of whole foods. If you were just eating food as close to nature as possible, how different would that be? Then compare it to whole food plant-based, where you leave off the animal product because of the extra saturated fat, dioxins, PBCs, microplastics. You can't even get a can of sardines, the lowest on the food chain of the ocean, and not get microplastics from those sardines. Doesn't happen when we're eating our food that is plant-based. We just have to watch the chemicals, and we work on that, or get organic. And anyway, it's still less expensive than buying big chunks of meat. When people say, I can't afford that, I think, yeah, you can. There's nothing less expensive than beans and rice, and that's whole food, plant-based. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples by sharing my screen. I have to bring this a little closer because there we go. And we're going to look at just what I'm talking about, and I'll be back with you on the screen in a minute. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to repeat that sentence. Why no processed foods on Dr. Goldner's protocols and for your health? I just had to show you this. This was the cutest thing. And I showed my husband, I was making my smoothie. I make a smoothie, and that's what happened with Dr. Goldner's protocol, that people were saying, oh my gosh, these salads of 1 pound of greens and cruciferous vegetables, minimum a day, and then up to another half a pound of anything you want of those vegetables at 25% maximum fruit, or more vegetables. Anyway, I was making my smoothie. What happened is, I'll finish that sentence, that they came up with, oh, well, why don't we just make them into smoothies, these delicious smoothies? And that's what most people do. That container of smoothies it's a little less than 90 ounces. It's not 64. And it is, it's spinach, kale, and broccoli. That's the entire 1 pound. Then I put in 2 bananas, mango, some pineapple, some strawberries. I don't use blackberries or the dark berries, because I like it to be bright green, and if I darken them, then it looks brown. Isn't that funny? And I eat those blueberries separately, just because the aesthetics, I guess, at least I eat with my eyes. But the thing that's so cute is when the whole thing was done. Can you see this? Can you see that? That is a spinach leaf that fell through the opening in this handle and lodged itself. And I just thought that was magical. Anyway, it doesn't take much to entertain me, does it? All right, so let's talk about processed foods. This is about as innocent as it gets. Wow. There's no problem with having chips. These are thin and crispy. They're organic. There's no GMO. They have sea salt. This must be a good, healthy food. I think they're kosher. They're vegan. They're all those things that we would think just a little won't matter. So what are we looking at here? 8 chips. How many of you could possibly eat 8 chips if you had a big bowl of salsa, or if you had some guacamole? 8 chips is 130 calories. What else is 130 calories? How about 2 medium apples? How about a pound of steamed broccoli with your favorite, or raw broccoli? That's right. I'm not doing steamed anything for a while, but I will be. Steamed broccoli seasoned with maybe some nutritional yeast and some pepper and your favorite seasoning. So what's the problem here? Well, for one thing, we're looking at, I'm going to see if I can get my pointer there. There we go. We're looking at 7 grams of fat. There are 3 macronutrients. well, there's four, but I'll three that we really talk about, and that is carbohydrates, fat, carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Both protein and carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. Fat is 7 calories per gram. So I don't mean that, they're not 7, it's 9 calories per gram. Fat is 9. So I rounded up to 10 for the ease of, math for especially me. And 7 would be 70 calories. So you can take off just a few, because it's, well, what that would be, 63 calories of this 130. Is that about half of the calories in these chips is fat? And then you look at the sodium, 65 milligrams of sodium isn't bad. If you're watching your health diligently, the recommendation is no more than 15 grams of salt a day. The FDA recommendation, which is, some people say, way too generous, is 2,300 grams a day, which is about a teaspoon of salt. And by the way, that is what Dr. Goldner recommends, that teaspoon, if you're drinking 96 ounces or more of water, because you're washing away a lot of the sodium and other electrolytes in your body. Okay, so you take just this. Okay, I'm just going to have 8 chips. I probably will end up with 16 or more. So you can double this or triple this. But you start adding, when you look at these numbers, how quickly you're going to get to 2,300. And this is just a snack food. A little tiny bit of fiber, a little tiny bit of protein in there. But what are you watching? When you turn a bag around, look at the fat, multiply it by 10 if you want to do it easily, or by 9, and see how much of that percentage that is of the total calories. This is half fat. What about the ingredients? Not so bad. Organic whole ground corn, organic sunflower oil, and organic safflower oil. What's the red alarm there? Well, it's the omega-6 fatty acids. That's what we were saying about the processed foods. Even though if you look at the top, look at this, vegan, kosher, no artificial flavors, colors, preservatives. If you must eat a chip, this is a good chip to eat, but you can see there's no free pass here. What about breakfast? Oh, I'm going to do something healthy. I'm maybe traveling and I'm bringing this with me. It's instant, it's organic, it's all those things we talked about. It's a whole grain, it's flavorful and hearty and etc. So let's look at that. There's a package of apple cinnamon and maple brown sugar, and you get a few of those per, maybe you get one of those per. Oh no, you get 4 of each of those packages. So this is breakfast cereal. Why am I getting almost 50 calories of that 170? Remember, 5 times 9, almost 50, in fat. It's less in the brown sugar. But then let's travel down. Sodium, 110 grams of sodium. If we had chips and this in one day, now we're at 165, a little less in the other one. Fiber's okay. It would be nice to have 4 and 5 grams of fiber, or 5 or 6 grams of fiber in your breakfast cereal. But look at this. This is sugar. Think of it this way. 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. This means the person who sat down to this, and this package is 4 grams, 40 grams. 40 grams is about 1 ounce. Let's call it almost 2 ounces. Who eats a tiny little bit of that in the morning? You usually have a much more substantial bowl, or you certainly want a more substantial bowl. And 9 grams of sugar means that's more than 2 teaspoons. Imagine sitting down at your breakfast table and taking 2 teaspoons of sugar and piling it on whatever you're eating. You wouldn't do it. Oh, okay, that was total sugars. And some of the sugar can come from the natural ingredient like oat, but this is the important one right there below that. Includes added sugars. That's where the extra 2 teaspoons got thrown into your cereal. 5 grams of protein, that's not bad at all. But let's look at the ingredients. Whole grain oats, that's good. Cane sugar, some walnuts and some dried apple and some flaxseed and quinoa, cinnamon, natural flavors. That's not bad. Let's look at the maple sugar. We have the grains and we have brown sugar, cane sugar, and maybe molasses. How about maple sugar? In other words, if you did this at home, you could put little bits of dates, you could put some raisins, you could put some whole food, leave the sugar alone. That ends up balming your, again, taste buds and makes you want more. And I went to look at these packages that you're going to see. I went to our natural food store. We have one near me, Clark's, and then there's, some of you are familiar with a number of, well, let's call it local Whole Foods stores. Natural food stores is what they call Clark's. Let's look at some other things. Everybody thinks, oh, granola, I'll just have granola. Granola is really healthy. It's whole grain, it's organic. Well, 2/3 of a cup of granola. And remember what we were saying earlier, what I was saying earlier, 1 ounce, 40 grams is about an ounce, maybe 1.5. Who's going to have an ounce unless you're using this just to scatter a little bit, maybe on some ice cream or something? But 2/3 of a cup, even put a bowl in front of you and put 2/3 of a cup of anything, doesn't look like a lot. What are we looking at here? Again, this is just in the morning. And one more time, we're looking at, what is that? 8 times 9. Well, let's call it almost 80 calories of fat. Is that a third of that? Yeah, that's about a third. It's a little bit more. Well, it's about a third of the calories from this come from fat. We wouldn't even think of putting that into our oatmeal. Then we have sodium, 65. That's not bad. It's not good if you have a number of foods all day long that this keeps adding to. Fiber's not bad, but look at the sugars. Would you sit down, and that's 12 grams, what we were looking at before, 4 grams equal 1 teaspoon, 3 teaspoons of sugar. You sit down and say, give me the sugar bowl, and you throw in 3 teaspoons. When I'm shopping, for example, at, let's say, Costco or at Trader Joe's, and Tim happens to be with me, there isn't a package I ever pick up that I don't turn it around and I examine for these numbers, the fat and what percentage of that. They say, what they're saying is percentage of fat for the day with your minimum requirement. I'm not going to look at that. That makes it look like, oh, 5% is nothing. I look at what percentage of that food is fat. I would understand if it was 40 or 50% and it was a piece of meat, that could be 60, 70, 80, but I don't eat that for that reason. But to have something I eat be almost 50% or 30%, and it's just supposed to be my breakfast cereal, and then three teaspoons of sugar thrown in, I don't think so. And then let's look at the ingredients. Always look at the ingredients to see where it's coming from. Whole grain oats, sugar is the next ingredient, and then some rice, sunflower oil. Sunflower oil is a 40-to-1 ratio of omega-6s over omega-3s. So all of the flaxseed you had that day has basically been left on its own while that enzyme is working on your omega-6s. Do you see what we mean by that? And raisins and cranberries and molasses, and the rest of it looks okay. But even something as innocent as granola, we have to think about it's processed, and it does affect us in a way that putting foods together, like some oat groats, some whole grain oats, that you just get used to making, wouldn't challenge you with. The difference is quite remarkable. Now, this is dairy-free cheddar mac and cheese. I loved mac and cheese. Who didn't love mac and cheese? Well, some people. Gluten-free, dairy-free. Boy, I really want that. Would I want to eat it? All right. 2/3 of a cup would make me feel like I was starving. So 1 serving, and that's where the caloric, the numbers relate to. 2/3 of a cup is 1 serving. That wouldn't be enough. I would want at least a cup and a half, and that would be almost 2 servings. Calorically, that for that one piece of my meal is not what I would want to invest. The fat's not bad. You'll look at that. So that's not a problem at all. The sodium, sodium is 510 on that 2/3 of a cup. If I doubled it, that would be 1,000. That's almost up to the 1,500. That is the highest recognized. And sugar's not a problem, but let's look at the ingredients. Rice pasta, which means it's just white rice that has been stripped down, and brown rice that has been stripped down. Tapioca maltodextrin. Ooh, let's talk about maltodextrin. What is maltodextrin? Because you're going to see this all the time when you're looking at labels, and I'm going to read it to you. Maltodextrin is a white powder made from starches like corn, rice, potato, wheat, tapioca. In terms of health, it can impact the body in several ways. Blood sugar spikes, it's rapidly digested as a sugar, can raise blood levels very quickly, which is problematic. For gut health, it can negatively affect the gut bacteria. We talked about that earlier, promoting that harmful bacteria that we were talking about, as opposed to the cornucopia of healthy, beneficial bacteria. Weight gain, as a carbohydrate with a high glycemic index, consuming maltodextrin in large amounts can contribute to weight gain. And it's processed like refined carbohydrates. It lacks any nutritional value at all. No vitamins, minerals, fiber, and contributes to a poor diet. So do we really find it very often? You bet we do. It's found in foods because it's an additive to improve texture, thickens the food, adds and acts as a preservative in these processed foods. You will find it in sports drinks and supplements as a quick source of energy, and then it's in a lot of other foods like this, our mac and cheese. Third ingredient, sea salt, cornstarch, yeast extract. The rest of these are not beneficial. They just might be benign. Lactic acid, some people say that's problematic. But anyway, again, take time to look at not just the front cover, but the nutritional facts, and then also the ingredients. Now, this looks like a healthy brand. Again, it's all of those wonderful words we're looking for. I love Vietnamese pho soup. I have to get rice noodles. Most of it is rice noodles. Some is made with udon, but I believe pho is usually made with rice noodles. The whole bowl is 300 calories. That's not bad at all. I'm not seeing fat. I'm seeing a mass of sodium. Remember, this is saying that it's 39%, but that's of 2,300, not of the 1,500 that if you have any chronic illness at all, you want to keep your sodium down to. That's what's recommended. Fiber isn't bad. Sugars, why are they putting what amounts to 1.25 teaspoons into my soup? What are the ingredients? Look at all of this. Modified tapioca starch. In other words, this is stripped down food. It's wheat that has been stripped down. It's not whole wheat. It's modified tapioca starch, and that's the inside. Wheat gluten. We have dextrose, that's a sugar. Vegetable-based more sugar in that. The rest of it, oh, canola oil, highly processed oil. Maltodextrin, that's what we were talking about just now. So look at these, and when you start getting xanthan gum, any of the gums are emulsifiers. They hold things together and they keep them blended so that they don't separate into parts. And all of them have a effect on the microbiome, some a little bit more than others. And of course, soy and wheat, some of us, like me, are sensitive to wheat gluten, couldn't do that. Now, this is something that I talk about all the time. You go in and you choose a food from a fast food restaurant. You have no idea what's in it. If you were looking at a quarter pounder, and that's one of their more benign hamburgers, it's a patty and it's going to be at least 80% fat. The fat is hugely, no, I said that wrong. No, that is true, 80% fat, because they're inexpensive burgers, and the more expensive burgers get leaner usually to a degree, but so many people like the taste of the fat that they don't get too lean or people would complain. Sesame seed bun, processed cheeses, if I opened that up, you'd see all kinds of things you would never eat in a processed food, and that is their cheese. But let's look at the bun. Let's look at the bun. There are, I've counted it, 28 ingredients in the bun of McDonald's hamburgers. Why? Well, you've got an enriched flour here, meaning it's a stripped down flour. And then remember what I said, they bring back some nutrients, basically out of balance of what they would be in nature, and they put them back in. We've got water. The third ingredient is sugar. Why? Well, because that's what people like. And then yeast, and then oil. You don't have to put oil in breads, but they do because it makes it more soft. Sesame seeds, salt, wheat gluten, that makes it hold together, and it's sort of the glue that makes the bread stronger. Vinegar, and then we get to the good stuff. Soy lecithin. Anytime you see any kind of lecithin, soy lecithin or any other, it's an emulsifier. Your microbiome, your gut bugs do not need an emulsifier down there. It wreaks havoc. Dough conditioners, such as, they might as well say all of these, calcium sulfate and carbonate and ammonium sulfate and others, whatever they get to turn this food-like substance into a product that can sit around. You've heard that story. I don't know if it's true, that somebody went into their daughter's, I don't know if it was a dorm room or bedroom, after 2 years of absence, and there was a McDonald's hamburger under the bed and it was still edible. That's not unrealistic. And preservatives, these and more. And what I thought had been disallowed in our food chain, high fructose corn syrup. Again, highly addictive and one of the worst things that we can do for our health. In-N-Out burgers. Well, Nan, I don't go to McDonald's. I go to In-N-Out burgers. This is better. It's still a refined flour. In other words, I'm going to strip you down and then I'm going to put some things in you. We still have the sugar as the number 3. The oil, again, high in omega-6s. Wheat gluten to hold it together, not good for any of us that are gluten sensitive. And then we start adding the preservatives and dough conditioners and any number of them, such as, and calcium sulfate. Okay, so even In-N-Out burger that people think that's about as pure as a burger gets, well, not if you look at the bun. So back to what I showed you initially. Food can be as simple as vegetables ground up with fruit and be absolutely delicious. This is the combination that is used to make the Goldner protocol smoothies. 75% of greens and cruciferous. I even now throw in a little broccoli with my kale and my spinach. 25% fruit. And if you go to smoothieshred.com and want to see some smoothie recipes for yourself. Smoothie, SMOOTHIE, shred, SHRED.com. And go to recipes. They have, oh gosh, maybe a dozen or more recipes for smoothies. This is real food. It's vegetables chopped up. This is all part of the Goldner protocol. Vegetables chopped up and wrapped in collard green leaves. It was a delicious meal. That was my meal one night. These big, gorgeous salads with the colors of the rainbow and the cruciferous vegetables, and as much avocado as I want. Soups, this is not the protocol of Dr. Goldner, but this is one of my favorite soups. It's a zucchini cheddar soup. There's no cheese in it. It's nutritional yeast, which is great, what they call nooch, and zucchini and tomato and onion, and absolutely fabulous. Real food can be delicious. This is simply beans and rice and olives, and this here is my vegan yogurt. I'm sorry, this isn't the yogurt. This is my tofu sour cream and some salsa. Very, very satisfying meal. Same thing here. This is lentils and spaghetti sauce over fettuccine. That is a, oh, what is the grain for this? This might be a quinoa pasta. So you get the extra protein in the pasta that way. And you don't have to do without those baked goods people buy that are so full of things you don't want. These are muffins. These are delicious muffins. If you look at nansimonson.com and then go to recipes and look at muffins, these are my cram muffin. No, these are, they're either the cram muffins or they are one of my latest, which is an apple oat muffin, and they happen to have sugar-free carob chips in there. And this is my own, these are my own bread rolls with nothing in them but whole food that is plant-based. Again, look at my recipes for these as well, and I believe they're buckwheat. And something as simple as some seeds and some berries ground up with some, I believe this was raspberries, and ground up with a little bit of unsweetened almond milk, made a delicious dessert. And I had to share something. This is my brand new baby. This baby was thrown out of a car and saved by my neighbor, whose dog went nuts when she saw it. So she said, would you foster it? Well, guess how long that lasted before I said, okay, I'll keep her. And the point of my kitty is that she gave me food for her, but I just had to replace it. Why didn't I just go and buy for this obligate carnivore something off a shelf that was, oh, I don't know, that was a meat-based anything? Because I would never feed my animals anything that wasn't made for animals, that didn't have the theanine, for example, that you've got to give to cats. Or is it, I believe it's theanine. I wouldn't give this sweetheart at the beginning of her life anything that wasn't made for this animal's, this cat's body. Why in the world would I give something that's not made for my body to me, my loved ones, and hope that all would turn out well? Because it won't. That's all. I'm going to stop screen share, but there we go. And I'll finish there. And I'll finish our conversation. Again, I'm Nan Simonson, Aging Powerfully. I wrote this just before turning 70. I'll be 74 in 2 months. And I feel that I'm aging backwards with whole food that is plant-based. And I want to recommend that you consider, if you have what has been called an incurable disease, check out Goodbye Autoimmune, check out Goodbye Lupus, check her out and just look up the links that I'll give you below. Consider Aging Powerfully if you want the blueprint of lifestyle as medicine. I wrote it after a lifetime of some challenges, and so there's a little bit of a memoir there, but the rest is all it's a real good reference guide to health ongoing. And if you like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share it. That's how people will know about it. And my mission to pass on the word, well, through the next 1, 2, or 3 decades. Have a great day. I know I'm going to, and thank you for your time. Bye-bye.